Mr. Ian Tonge, he's from UK. Mr. Ian Tonge, can you please, Ms. Al-Jafar, can you unshare your presentation, please?
Okay, just a second. Okay.
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 Yes. Thank you.
Wow. My previous speakers who have highlighted how much more promising the future for a diabetic can be. Now, I just want to give my fellow diabetics the confidence that they can get there to use these new technologies and advancements effectively. I mean, if I can do it, so can they. My presentation isn't there.
Not yet.
Anyway, good afternoon. My name is Ian Tonge, and I'm here to present my diabetes journey, 62 years plus now. I'm not like the other presenters. I'm quite different. I'm just a practitioner, no more, of successful diabetes management. I would love to be a doctor or a professor, but alas, I did not choose to mortgage my early life, do anything other than survive and earn my living. I actually feel quite guilty now. It's my presentation.
Do you have your presentation?
No, it's not here. Do I need to bring it up myself? I thought I'd sent it over for that to happen automatically.
No, you need to go to share. Have you got a document open, your presentation open, and then you need to go to share, and then you share it. I think you're in the wrong. Where did you save your document? You are in, where did you save your document? No, don't go there. Where did you save your document?
I basically sent it to
on your device.
Yeah, I've got it.
Where did you save it?
Nope.
I see presentation, the Word document. Is it that one? Or PowerPoint?
Here we go. And back to what Hen said earlier, I'm one of those oldies.
Okay. I can see it. So do the PowerPoint screen at the bottom of your toolbar. Move on. Yeah. And the next one, that one. Yeah. Slideshow.
Right. I say, good afternoon. How different it is, the days that we are now living in. It's these days actually have influenced the conference itself. We must all be so much more careful and apply a little more consideration to the lives we now lead. Just like being a diabetic, I suppose, dare I say it. My role here is to explain a very few of the more pertinent details of a long-term, successful life of a diabetic. I have diabetes. Diabetes does not have me. Are my memoirs written to assist the diabetic community to understand just how simple diabetes can be to manage and to tame to the point of achieving a near normal life. A true good vibe story to help all diabetics gain confidence, reduce diabetes stress levels, and live a much happier and healthier life. And I'm afraid there's not enough of that about. First question we must ask ourselves is actually, what is diabetes? I've heard so many descriptions even this morning, but over the years you hear most people who don't understand what diabetes is. Well, diabetes, when it boils down to it, is a chronic condition caused by so many factors. These may be avoidable. They may not be avoidable. They're either metabolic or autoimmune. The management, however, remains the same in its basic requirements, and that is the balancing of our own blood sugar levels. The difference being, however, how we may achieve that. Diabetes is recognised by the World Health Organization as being a pandemic and has been for some years now. Current estimates appear to show there are around 500 million diabetics worldwide. The mix for this can be further disseminated into the relative categories. Type 1, insulin-dependent diabetes, is represented by approximately 50 million, or 10% of that total. Type 1 is an autoimmune disorder where the pancreatic beta cells have been destroyed by the immune system, mistaking them as being alien. Type 2, however, is insulin-resistant diabetes, representing the majority of approximately 450 million, or 90% of that figure. Type 2 is more of a metabolic disorder than autoimmune, although there appears growing pressure to reclassify it in that area also. Other categories are being discovered all the time, but all are aspects of the only two officially recognised categories, that's type 1 and type 2. There has been a drive to recognise a type 3 diabetes, referring to patients who have Alzheimer's disease for which there has been a link to insulin resistance in the brain. This has not, at least yet, been ratified as a category. Memory problems and diabetes can be the cause of great concern. Hypoglycemia is linked to short-term memory loss, where hypoglycemia is linked to long-term memory issues. Short-term memory issues are things like forgetfulness. Long-term, unfortunately, are far more desperate. Alzheimer's and dementia are but mere examples here. It is also shockingly predicted that diabetes by the year 2030 will be the 7th leading cause of death. Currently, this is the current figure, an estimated 4 million people die every year as a result of diabetes or diabetes complications. Cost elements associated with diabetes are extremely frightening and foreboding. Research is the key enabler to reducing that impact from many economies throughout the world today. This conference will be doing its bit for all of this. Can I just make a point before I do continue? I'm actually a type 1 diabetic, but nevertheless, my advice is appropriated across the spectrum. Balancing of our blood sugars, as I mentioned earlier, is the key to be applied here. Wow, the slide that says darker times, I bet everybody was thinking, what the heck's he going to talk about here? Well, let me just introduce myself. Who am I? And I think I mentioned it earlier. I am a long-term practitioner in the art of successful management for diabetes. Indeed, I'm living proof of that statement. I was diagnosed at the ripe old age of 2 years old, the day after my second birthday, back in 1958, when the opportunity to lead anything other than a sad reflection of a life was but a dim and distant hope. We got here. Really, there was a lack of any substitutes or anything like that. We were basically offered nothing but a plain and fairly drab and dire diet. It actually made starvation an option. That could never be the case for me, because I was a twin. I've got a twin brother out there, an identical twin brother, I hasten to add, who isn't diabetic. How can that be? Lots of medical people in the program that I'm involved in here. I wonder if they can answer that question. I mean, I got the looks, the personality and the charm. He just got the size and the strength elements. So maybe we're not that identical. The injections that we used to have, I used to have to boil, or my mother used to have to boil a glass syringe with a needle every evening for about an hour. Sterilize it for the next use, and then sterilize it after that for the use following that. And by the way, the needles we used possibly in excess of 2 to 3, possibly even 4 weeks at a time. You needed a drilling operation, a drilling certificate to use most of them. They were that big and thick, and by the end of it all, very blunt. We had lack of tracing capabilities. For reviews that we went on, the specialists only had access to blood tests, mostly taken a week or so earlier, showing the results on that day and a handwritten set of urine test results. I emphasize urine test results. Unfortunately, glycated hemoglobin, or HbA1c, blood history was not available until the very late 1970s. And last but not least, that big question mark there was a lack of effective management capability. I managed my diabetes on my own between reviews, basically by doing urine tests. The difference, the latency of urine and urine glucose is one of the many reasons that blood glucose tests are much the preferred option. So it's hardly surprising that prospects for a diabetic patient were far from the pleasant vista we can now enjoy. Apart from almost from the start of my relationship with diabetes, I have applied, or had applied for me, a flexible management style that has been perfectly suited to my needs. This has removed a requirement to seek the sweeter fare elsewhere, the problem most younger diabetics had then and still do now, resulting in greater problems impacting their later lives. I was actually on a Lyme diet. Now that was developed by Dr. R.D. Lawrence back in 1929. So bear in mind, this is now 1958. 29 years before that was the diet that I was now being instructed to be on. Things didn't move so fast in those days, very unfortunately. That diet allowed me 22 black lines per day and somewhere in the region of 6 to 8 red lines per day. The black lines represented the carbohydrates, the energy value of my diets, whereas the red lines were proteins, vegetables, and other such health options. From an incredibly young age, I was able to recognize simply by looking at a plate of food if a portion of whatever would be enough or too much for my insulin taken to consume. In those days, unlike today, we had to take a set number of units on a daily basis. That was only ever changed at hospital reviews, which were once every 6 months, or if you were particularly good, a year. I never got to the year purely because my age declined the requirement to do that. My breakfast injection would be followed by a prescribed portion of these lines, broken into a breakfast, followed on by a 10 o'clock snack, then a lunch, and then a 3 o'clock snack. For that reason, most of the insulin I took on a daily basis was taken with my breakfast injection. My dinner injection covered my dinner, together with the pudding, followed by a supper, should that be required. Extremely basic approach, I can see, but it took away so many unrequired complexities in those days. Carbohydrate counting was not done then, but Mum taught me what it would take to constitute a line portion. Potato, a slice of bread, a biscuit. In fact, from that training session, I was able to deduce that I could actually eat 22 gypsy cream biscuits every day if I so desired. Totally unhealthy option, but nevertheless, one that was available if I cared to use it. Throughout the day, I was expected to perform a urine test as often as possible. Another lesson driven home to me by my mum and dad. This was simply to enable my life and as safe as possible for a young and active child growing up with other young and active children. In a way, I'm so glad I was one of 5 children in the family, even though I was and still am the only diabetic in the family. I was going to tell a joke about that, but I'm probably in the wrong company to do that. Throughout my life, this flexibility has served me well to the point of being the proud acquirer of 0 complications after over 6 decades with my diabetes partner. My life has been as full as almost anyone would want, diabetic or not. I have worked and played with a vigour not normally associated with having such an extensive condition that inflicted so many limitations. And despite the roller coaster ride diabetes applied, I play hard, partying, drinking and eating with few, if any, problems. I work hard, long and late, again, with few, if any, problems. I have done and do this simply by paying the right amount of respect to the needs applied for my diabetes. Perhaps the most important aspect of this management plan must be the constant watch on my blood sugar status. Doing this has ensured that I do not drift into problem areas, hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia. Hyperglycemia is the root cause of diabetic problems, complications, for want of a better word. Consistent high levels of sugar in the blood will too often result in the many issues inflicted upon too many diabetics. They are far too common. Loss of limbs, vision, and so forth. Constant hyperglycemia can also result in the loss of long-term memory of the patient, and that can lead to further awful problems. Hypoglycemia provides the most dangerous of situations diabetics may be confronted with. It takes just one awful hypoglycemic attack to leave a diabetic fighting, often losing a battle to stay alive. Frequent hypoglycemia can result in the loss of short-term memory of the patient, again presenting following issues that can be much further reaching. Both areas that require the patient to be aware of in order to prevent the ongoing problems and complications promised from not aligning a simple and effective management system our bodies will alert us to a hypo arriving, but not a hyper. And being diabetic means we will amass a journey filled with either, or mostly both, these contradictory elements. We have to manage them. I can proudly boast being complication-free, certainly to this point in my life, and the plan is to remain in that condition moving forward. Simplicity is the key to successful achievement. Books provide the proof of how I did and do this whilst enabling honest guidance for its audience. Even though I really should not be here today to expose my story to you all. Let me explain that. Being hit directly when stood outside of my own car by another car travelling at over 80 miles an hour does not generally lead to anything other than the next trip being to the mortuary. Again, diabetic or not. Let me just explain that last statement because it was rather profound. I'll give you a brief rundown of what happened that day. After a particularly long and successful day, I was driving towards Northampton on the M1 motorway, one of the busiest motorways in the UK, hence its name, M1. I had stopped at the services to do a test, have a coffee, a snack and a refresh. It was around 1800 hours and my stop would enable this check on my status and allow the rush hour traffic to calm a little. Relaxed and refreshed, 45 minutes later, I proceeded on my way. I was coming to overtake a HGV, a lorry, wagon or whatever you want to call it, in the middle lane. As I was about to pass him, for whatever reason, he started to move right in front of me. At this point, instinct took over and I turned my steering wheel to avoid hitting him. I so wish I had not done that. My car hit the centre reservation and went into a spin. According to the reports, I must have hit my head and lost any control of my car. It was like looking into a kaleidoscope with all the lights going around me. I was actually suffering severe concussion. I have no idea how long this lasted, but after what seemed to be an age, my car came to a stop. At this point, I had no idea where I was or indeed what day of the week it was. All I knew was that my car might be in a state of death. So I decided to see how bad it may be and if I would be able to drive away from here. I alighted from my car and I recall thinking, that's an insurance job. But I still needed to check if driving was a viable option. Was my engine still in situ? And were my wheels and tyres okay? I walked to check the front of my prized 3-month-old BMW. Getting out of a smashed up car on the motorway is foolish enough. When you understand more, this defines utter madness. My car had ended up in the middle lane, facing the centre reservation. So at the point of me arriving at the front, I was actually stood in the fast lane of one of the busiest roads in the country, just after rush hour. Standing there for a matter of moments, I was distracted by a loud screeching noise coming from my left. I turned to see what this might be and was blinded by the bright lights. Immediately before, everything went dark. The next thing I recall being attended to by a group of medics trying to prepare what they had assumed would be a body for delivery to the morgue, that is me, to hospital. To and indeed since that point, nobody has survived such an impact. I can only describe myself as being unique in that fact. Not a uniqueness that I cherish, I'll be honest with you, I wish it had never happened. But that day was Monday, the 18th of November, 1985, and the time was 1850 hours. I can never forget that nightmare, which is still living with me to this day. A totally life-changing event that would serve more consequences further on for both myself and my constant diabetes companion. I hope you're all still with me. My life and lifestyle were now changed out of all recognition. Such a catastrophic accident was not likely to do anything less. Physically, I was not able now to use any extensive exercise to drive away my higher levels, as had previously been the case. My legs are all but wrecked now. But that was just the start of so many changes as a direct result of the accident. Like the senses we have, when one is not there or faltering, another will take up a stronger role. Physical attributes diminished, mental strength was now a defined requirement, which actually represent these designated editions of my memoirs. I manage and retain a well-balanced approach to my diabetic life, still going, a little less strong, but nevertheless determined that diabetes will not have me. I stand before you quite proudly, actually, as a 64-year-old on a range of medications. I'm on Thiasp and Tresiba from insulin pens, not a pump, diabetes related, obviously. I'm on thyroxine because I have an underactive thyroid, again, diabetes related. I'm on statins, diabetes related, but again, they are for a prevention rather than a cure. I don't have high cholesterol and I want to remain that way. I'm on antidepressant medication. That's not for diabetes, that's accident related. The big black hole that was left after the accident caused me many, many, many years of dark and deeply horrible thoughts. I'm on probably the most extreme, powerful pain medication you can get on prescription. Again, accident related. I do suffer from short-term memory issues, but with all the medication that I'm taking that highlights memory and short-term memory in particular as a possible side effect for my accident, I think this is more than being diabetes related. But obviously, working in the lower realms of levels, as I always have done, probably won't have helped either. The reason I am writing my books are numerous. There are too many dire warnings out there for diabetics. Complications will arrive, come what may, is the impression left here. I want to give them a good news story about how a diabetic has taken hold of his diabetic life, even from a minuscule age, and managed it through successfully all the way, certainly to this point, and hopefully a lot further now. Too many feel also that it is too difficult to control their diabetes and end up giving in and allowing it to control them. That's never going to end well. I'm living proof of how easy it can be, and all I want to do is guide others with my story using true and real life scenarios to emphasize just what is possible, if only to enable a review of how one has survived and recovered from the unsurvivable. My books require reading. I Have Diabetes Does Not Have Me comes in 2 volumes. The first volume, Accident Survival Guide, depicts my physical life with my good friend and surviving that terrifying accident. Soon to be released, any month now, Wrestling Jelly takes the readers through my recovery from that accident, and both are available. The first one is available from Amazon, wherever you may be. The second one will be available from Amazon as soon as it's been released. I just want to issue one last residing thought. Beware. Diabetes will not kill you, but you can kill yourself with diabetes if you are not careful. And on that point, I would ask, are there any questions? I guess not. You're either all stunned or I've sent you all to sleep. I hope it's not the latter. Was that okay?
Mr. Ian Tong, I would like to thank you so much for a very powerful presentation. I think we all can identify with you in the sense that we either do suffer from diabetes or know of somebody that who suffers from diabetes based on the many presentations this morning that we had with regard to that. Thank you so much. Can you hear me for sharing that? Is there anybody that has a question for Mr. Ian Tong? Any questions? It appears there's no questions, Mr. Tong.
Great.
And